Hi again, Thomas. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really enjoying these talks. The one last week got a great reception. Now, this one is on my Thomas Sheridan Arts channel. I check out people to go to the previous one on Neil's McDonald's Megalithic channel.
Yep.
I'll put that. You'll find it anyway. And what I'm doing on both our channels is we're both creating a playlist that will be devoted to these series of talks that will go on however long they go on. So just remember to watch them all from the beginning. So if you haven't heard about this one last time, go to either the playlist for this, which will be posted down below in the comments, or go to the link I'll post to Neil's original video, because these are part of a continuing dialogue, and you have to really, we're going, one will run into the other as a kind of a long discourse of information, and we're going to bounce back between both channels. So we kind of find middle ground for both our audiences to enjoy these things. And I think we're still working on getting the format right, but we're getting there. So we'll begin this. We decided we're going to begin the show with a bit of a current event chat from the off media point of view, of course, not mainstream. And then we talk about Megaliths, mythology, magic, and 40 and stuff after that. So Neil, last week was great. I really enjoyed it, but we're living in amazing, strange times. It's almost
incredible,
like,
yeah. Really are.
Reality has been ripped asunder. Reality has been ripped asunder.
Yeah, reality is now a totally different thing than it was, wasn't it, really? I was looking at, I think we're coming out at the end of the whole thing, but there's still, you can go into conspiracies or not, but whatever way, this Klaus Schwab, who I think is actually a knight now, I think the Queen actually went and knighted him. He's still on about the Great Reset. And I've listened to him speak, and he talked about the pulling down a couple of things, really. One was the financial situation. And I can see that next year, there's going to be the situation. We've spent this amount of trillions of pounds and dollars and euros on getting you out of this problem, and now we're going to have to, you're going to have to start paying it back. And well, the first thing was I was looking at the financial services compensation scheme, because I've said that what's going to happen is, well, it's happened before, hasn't it, where they've bailed in, they've come to your bank account and they've said, I think it was Greece, wasn't it, or Cyprus? They've said, okay, we're going to stick our hand in your account and take out a certain amount. And the financial services compensation scheme says that we are safe up to 85,000. I think it goes up to 120 until January. And I just got an email through telling me from the Nationwide Building Society, telling me about this. I haven't got any. I've got an account with it. I've got money in it. I got 63p. Yet they're still telling me that it's safe up to 85,000. So why suddenly, after all these years, do we get these mass emails telling us about the financial services compensation scheme? It's for no reason.
There's funny business going on with the financial system, whether this is part of the universal basic income switch over or to a completely electronic system of finance. It's something dodgy is going down at the moment. And I recognized this from 2008 when the Irish economy collapsed. How that actually happened was banks, a certain bank, Anglo-Irish Bank, basically gambled the National Insurance Fund on deposits of savers, which was, I think at the time, was something like 20 billion euros. And that was just money held in the bank in case, in the banks, in the government, in case the banks had a problem, and it would protect the depositors and savings. Now, this bank were caught red-handed actually playing games, knowing that money was going to save their asses from going to prison. And we had an enormous financial, but it caused a damage to the economy that amazingly we did get out of pretty easy compared to what was being put on the agenda, mainly because we were incredibly wealthy at that. I think Ireland was the richest country in the world at the time of the 2008 collapse. So per capita, and even we were affected by that. But the thing was with what happened in Greece was they literally went into the Greek saving accounts and raided people's life savings. And in Ireland, they didn't do that. They actually were more sneaky in Ireland. What they did was they raised service charges on everything from car insurance to savings deposits to regular banking transactions all across the whole financial system, and hid the same thing that way. It was still a smash and grab raid to protect the banks. But it was essentially that's what it was. Just they hid it more sneakily in Ireland than they did in Greece, where at least in Greece they were honest about it. And so also Ireland was of the four countries that defaulted at that time. They called them the pigs: Portugal, Ireland, Greece, Spain. Ireland was by far the wealthiest of all the four. And that's why we ended up having to bail out 40% of the EU's total debt. Not just our debt, but the whole EU's debt, including the Germans and everyone else. And it was used as an example to kind of almost punish us, to and a lot of that had to do with Irish taxation rates, which favors US investment in Ireland. And the EU hates anything American on European, territory. And Ireland is very deep in with American corporations and business and culture and everything. And that was seen as a kind of let's get them, that kind of thing. What's happening now in England is quite worrying. Why would banks, where you don't have huge amounts of money, then be selling out these ass covering letters? Shenanigans going on there.
There's been that. I mean, this is how the way banks work, isn't it? What's the name of the book about banking? The Confessions of an International Hitman. That tells the whole story about the old bank. What was his name? He speaks at
the Confessions of an Economic Hitman. John Perkins was his name.
John Perkins, yeah.
I did a speaking tour with him and Max Kaiser in 2012.
Oh, right, yeah.
We traveled around London, Manchester, and Dublin. We played the big audiences. Very interesting guy.
I had
a chance to speak to him privately. Yeah, I mean, his story is completely true and legit. That's exactly what went down.
Fantastic. It's such an easy book to read, isn't it? All you need to know about the banking industry is in those few pages of that paperback, isn't it? It just says this is how it is, and it explains. I tell you what else we've been having as well. We've having messages like the Santander Bank and various things saying, "Don't worry, we'll take your house off you if you're in financial difficulties. Don't worry about it." Which, of course, they always did anyway. And we'll give you the money back, and you can stay there for the rest of your life. And but then, of course, all the property gets transferred to the bank. I mean, there's going to be big repercussions.
Like the old company towns in America, where you worked in the local mine in West Virginia. The mine owned the shop, owned your home, owned you, owned your kids. You just basically lived for that company in West Virginia, whatever you had. They want that globally.
Do you know what? Do you remember looking back to the Quakers, and they had cabarets and Fort Sunlight and all that sort of thing? And then it was like an indentured servitude, really, because they would give you a coin, they would pay you, but with that amount of money, but that coin had the stamp of the company on it, so you could only spend it in their shops. You could pay your rent with it. So basically, you're a slave, because you had to give your money back for everything you bought, but you give your wages back to them. So they may as well just not have paid you at all.
In Port Sunlight and places like that, you were given a better standard of living and much nicer housing. If you look at the houses these companies,
it's beautiful, isn't it?
People, there were beautiful homes at the time compared to the slums that were all around our cities and stuff. In Ireland, there was a place called Port Law where a leather company did the same, built a beautiful place for the locals to live in, but the money was actually pieces of leather, and they could only spend the leather locally. So the tannery just owned everybody, just like a Port Sunlight. I think that was a chemical company, wasn't it?
It's Lever Brothers. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, it's this is how they are. They really are like Mr. Burns in the Simpsons, and that's what Klaus Schwab is like. He's the latest in a line of what I call techno-utopian psychotics, where they're mentally ill, and they think the whole world are basically their pets. In America, they had these things back in the day called sea monkeys, and you used to put them in. They were eggs of shrimp. You put in a little city in in an underwater city. You held them in a fish tank in your house, and you had little houses for them and everything. But they're just shrimp. But it fostered this notion that their existence in this little world depended upon the person who had the sea monkeys, and that's how Klaus Schwab sees.
Yeah,
I'll put the sea
the,
monkey. It's just
the,
like that.
is it the Simpsons? Lisa Simpson made one in a bucket, and she was looking down on this film, and she was like the god of all these little things until Bart threw it in the bin, I think, something like that.
I
But
didn't
yeah, I
see
think
it.
that's the way they see us, isn't it?
That's their mentality. That's Klaus Schwab's mentality. A techno utopian psychotic.
But how much power have they really got? But and then the other thing I was going to mention is that him and also Gates have spoken about the worldwide grid coming down. And you think, well, this could never happen. But never have I known, I thought possible that Google would go down worldwide like it did a few days ago for about half an hour or so. Now that is scary.
And to date, they have not given, and this is what, 3 days from it, have not given an explanation of what went wrong. What YouTube went down. I had to sign back in, and I said, "Oh shit, that's it." They cancelled my YouTube account. I thought I was deplatformed, but everyone had to re-sign in. Like, so that suggests me some sneaky business, a hidden change in their contract or service agreement or something. The information war is real, and that was that now Google is loaded with Chinese communist agents. Some of them directly employed by the People's Army, high-ranking engineers within Google and within YouTube. And I mean, when people talk about there's been a takeover of the West by the Chinese Communist Party without a bullet being fired, it's true that they're doing it with the information and the industry wars.
It's really quite scary, isn't it? Because we rely so much on. I mean, everybody's, and if once you've got your card and there's no cash. Remember a couple of years ago, I was in Morrison's supermarket, a huge supermarket down on the docks here, and all the electronics, all the tills went down at Christmas, and you just want to see the absolute chaos that it caused. They were bringing these old machines out, ching, 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 ching. People were trying to spend with cash, and the whole place just went to pot. And imagine that going on if the whole lot goes down. The chaos is going to be amazing.
We'd be knocked back into the Victorian age. Easy.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, it might not be such a bad thing. So the other thing that was on sort of mind the agenda is that all this talk about UFO sightings all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Unusually so.
It's like the late 70s, early 80s again, especially in New York. Apparently, New York has had a colossal increase in UFO sightings over Manhattan and along the Hudson River. This is I don't believe in aliens visiting Earth and machine spacecrafts. I've never believed that, but I do believe in UFOs. In what they are, a mystery, unidentified. And you've had the Pentagon and the U.S. military and Navy, especially, declassifying everything, but it's been happening all over the world now. UFOs generally, I mean, I apply the Carl Jung model to it, that they're related to human consciousness, whatever they are. Some say demons, some say jinns, some say even us from the future, even us projected into the sky during times of great stress. So during the Cold War and Roswell, you had these UFO experiences when America and Russia were potentially going to bomb each other with nuclear weapons. And so in the 70s, New York City was dying. It was a completely bankrupt city. It was absolute hellhole. But it was in other ways, it was thriving with culture. So it was kind of a great place as well. And like you said, we go back to Victorian times, it wouldn't be so bad. But at least we have culture. We were knocked back in time. But New York had massive, tremendous. Even John Lennon, that song "Strange Days Indeed," he wrote a double fantasy. There's UFOs over New York, and I'm too surprised. There's one of the lyrics. That's because of the deterioration of the city at that time caused great psychological and emotional stress. Also, it happened not long after the 3 Mile Island reactor in Harrisburg in Pennsylvania had went into meltdown, and up the river, just very close to New York City, is a similar reactor called Indian Point, which was a massive UFO spot back then. And most of the books written in the 80s about UFOs were all New York centric, because there was so Whitley Strieber, there's a few others, like names escape me, but they were very New York eccentric because it was it's the hot spot, and now it's happening again. So it's the same insecurity from the lockdown, from the projection of human nervous system into the matrix, and it's fascinating. I always pay very, very careful attention to UFO clusters. They're so important because they're telling us much about the state of the human consciousness and psyche. Also, crop circles in England all manifested around the time of Thatcher and the miners' strike and the economic prop issues there and all that stuff. It's very. I have always. This is the psychic weather I talk about a lot, and so I mean that's how I feel about it, and I think it's. I'm not discounting the point that there's aliens and they could have come here somehow interdimensionally or something like that, but these are not mechanical spaceships, and I don't think even governments even know what they are. But I think 2021 is going to be the year of the UFO and the
It could well be because things are changing massively. I totally agree about the human psyche connection with. Well, I'm into all that sort of thing anyway, and the amount of collective anxiety and collective fear, it's like a huge web of it going around the world now, and it's got to have some effect on our reality, and that probably is exactly what that is.
Jacques Vallée, he wrote a fantastic book called Messengers of Deception back in the 70s. And he spoke about these things, about that he was adamant that they were not aliens, but the governments were very interested in them, especially the CIA, who created so many of these UFO and flying saucer sort of like Christian worship cults where Jesus was going to come as an alien or heaven was going to be in the spaceship. And one of the things, there's an actual, it's in here somewhere, is a picture of the Heaven's Gate cult when they were first started out. And where they first started out was in places like MIT and JPL, talking to high-end scientists and actually recruiting high-end scientists in these kind of space utopian cults. So I just want to say, I would urge people to get out and read this book and the David Moore book, Metaphors. I can't remember the first title of it. A very good book on it. It came out, an English chapter came out last year. And Passport to Magnolia, both by Jacques Vallée. I'll put
What's that one called again?
This one is called Messengers of Deception. When the video is up, I'll put proper pictures up so people get the titles.
Okay,
and these are important reads for the future going forward, because these are about the similar psychic weather during the Vietnam era in America and the growth of UFO cults and sightings as well.
That's fantastic. I can't remember what I was going to say then. I had something in my mind, but it...
Did you ever see Close Encounters of the Third Kind? It was a French science.
Yeah.
That was based on.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. About the whole religion thing, and they've very much started a new religion, haven't they? Which is the old Rona religion, where wash your hands, keep your distance, and everything is all. It's like a whole new religion again. That's exactly. Yeah, that's it. That like in the desert. But it's the whole thing is covering your face. So that's going to have a massive impact in itself, hasn't it? In the same way.
Well, they see the vaccine is even seen as a redemption thing. It's Jesus. It's the promise. It's Moses leading them to the promised land. It's all these things. The fertile crescent of herd immunity will be brought to us by, we brought Pfizer instead of Moses.
And we've got the technocrats again taking the lead.
Well, I said yesterday that Bill Gates is like, those high school shooters they have in America, those sort of like disenfranchised geeks who go into the school and machine gun all the kids up. He's one of them, except he's doing it as an adult using vaccine syringes to shoot everybody. But it's it's the same pathetic, geeky nerd drive to punish people who are, better looking, more socially adept than him. The same drive as a school shooter.
It's really quite scary, isn't it? And they're very similar. Him and our health minister as well, whose name I don't like to say. Yeah,
the guy crying with the dupers delight.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I saw Hancock actually with Klaus Schwab. Is that Klaus Schwab? Actually with him, having a meeting and shaking hands and all that. I mean, these guys are, they're like that. So it's no wonder we're in this trouble.
Yeah, and it all goes back to the Chinese Communist Party. Ultimately, anytime I've been to Preston, you've shown me around areas where there used to be enormous amounts of factories.
Oh, yeah.
They're all in China now, right? Under the auspices of, like, same with all the industry in Ireland, America, and everywhere else. It's all in China now because we were told that these things polluted. Like, you have to admire their genius at times.
Well, you do, yeah. They are very clever.
Genius. They fund this environmental thing that pollution kills people, factories kill people. We can't make money from this stuff anymore because unions have made the wages too high. Except in places, some of the countries like Switzerland, they've ignored that and still have industry. So move it all to China so we can have a green environment. I mean, it's genius. You have to admire the evil genius of it is astounding.
Because you end up with nothing, don't you? I mean, in Preston, when I was younger, there was literally hundreds of huge factories around the whole town, 100% employment rate, and you were guaranteed a job for life. And the last factory finally closed last year. And that's it, gone now. What have you got left? Well, the only thing is a university. And I don't think I've always said the universities can't last because it's like a penalty scheme. Yep. But what they've done is they've taken out all the wonderful buildings in the centre of Preston, and they've built student accommodation. Now, it's interesting to me that when the students aren't there anymore, because I can't see it's lasting anymore, you've ended up with Agenda 20, Agenda 30 housing sitting there ready to move people into. And also, when all the office blocks are empty because people are working from home, I mean, I don't know. I don't like to go into all this stuff, but you look at it.
Mainland China is now is mainland world,
Yeah, and we have nothing left.
Yeah, and the Agenda 21. Well, I've seen these new things, though. I've seen some things in recent days where there was an amazing critique of the Great Reset on Sky News Australia, where basically the reporter was calling them utopian psychopaths, lunatics. They should be laughed at. These people shouldn't be taken seriously and terrified. And they showed pictures of Klaus Schwab with, like, everybody, and people like Bono and the Pope and stuff like that, and there's something how insane these people are and their megalomania, and it was very refreshing to see that in a mainstream outlet. People are a lot more people are, because of alt media and alt tech, are getting wise to this.
Well, it's good, isn't it? Let's hope we can lampoon and burlesque them instead of them doing it to us, because that is a good way past it. But, things come to mind. In your town, I suppose every town's happened the same. They've created areas in the centre where, this is over the last 10, 20 years, where cars and people are supposed to intermingle happily. It's like a shared space. But people think, this is mad. Why would you do this? And it's only later you realise that this Agenda 2020, 2030 has been implemented. It's been slowly being implemented, hasn't it? With the cycle lanes as well. COVID cycle lanes. Can you imagine a little
paths? And all over the countryside now, the railway lines that should be protected for reopening possibly are now being converted into trailways, where you can walk. We're allowed to see the country as long as we stick to the old rail lines that have been converted into, cycleways and trailways and this kind of thing. Otherwise, we must not go into the forbidden zones.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
It's like
I was listening to a radio program, and I really like the guy who does the radio show, but he was saying, we're talking about electric cars. How can we do this? There's no way in the world that we're all going to be able to have an electric car. I think, you've nearly got it. You're just nearly there.
We don't have the power. We don't have the power. I mean, again, another great one the Chinese communists did was green energy. Shut down your ugly old power stations that create, oil and coal stations. Well, and put up these feckin' giant crucifixes for the middle class spinning in the countryside that need 15 tons of lubricant a year, need a diesel engine to start them, kill loads
of bird slices,
kill loads of birds, frighten all the wildlife out of the area because they kick up a racket when they're going, and destroy the natural view of the countryside. While the same Chinese who funded the likes of Greta Thunberg and the environmentalists and the Green parties in the West are building oil plants and grow plants every day.
Yeah, I was listening to Mr. Jack Boots John, who seems to be in charge at the moment, and he was being asked, what we're going to do. We're in trouble, with this virus situation. How are we getting out of it? And he's like, huge floating windmills in the middle of the sea. Candy floss plants powering huge cities and all this. Oh, it's insanity. Anyway,
in the forbidden zone.
In the forbidden zone, yes. Remember the countryside? Yeah, rewilding it's called now, isn't it? Yeah,
rewilding. You'll be allowed to see some of it through old railway lines that are now cycle paths and stuff. But you'll probably
you won't be able to actually go out into it.
Have drones and patrolling in the wilderness. Actually, in the 2020 UN Agenda 21, which has been updated, they talk about, and it's written like a 4-year-old wrote. This is what I find amazing about these documents. They speak and write like 9-year-olds. Some people will choose not to live in the big mega cities. They will be outside in. Dave Cullen did a great thing on it in his last video. They will live outside in reclaimed Victorian villages.
I'll be there. I'll be there. Yeah. I'll be there. That'll be me. Yeah, wonderful. I can't think of anything better.
Yeah. And they won't have access to cinemas because they're not vaccinated, and they won't have access to nightclubs and all the big hospitals.
We will have our own. Whatever we want to build, we'll do it ourselves.
There'll be lots of
bar, a restaurant.
Lots of wise doctors and nurses will want to live with us, not with them.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll have Vernon Coleman. And then there was, we're going to rewild, and we're going to introduce very dangerous creatures like wolves and sort of thing. Yeah. Well, that sounds a good idea. That sounds very safe. Anyway, let's move on, shall we?
We'll never move on from this, but for this episode.
Well, for the moment, yeah, for the moment. There was just a couple of people left. A couple of guys wrote some. Thanks for everybody, by the way, for all your messages that you left from the last. I've been trying to get around to mention a few, but I've just not had a minute. There's a couple of things that the northern route. And the access through Doggerland. Well, I don't see it as it going to that side of the country. I see it coming down the west, and I think from the line. This is the northern trade route we mentioned, and I see it coming from even from the Levant through Malta over the through the Straits of Gibraltar, down the coast of Portugal, and then Karnak. And then we would have been able to walk then across to Cornwall, and then you've got the Penrhyn Peninsula, then up through Wales to Anglesey, Isle of Man Island on the to the west, and then up round Callanish and Lewis, around the top to Orkney. That's the way I see it.
I agree completely, and I'll tell you why. There's a few things. The Doggerland looks like it was all bog. It looks like it would not have been a good terrain. It would have been Europe's biggest marsh, salt marsh. It would have been good for lots of animals, but wouldn't have been good maybe for humans to actually live on for lots of reasons. If you go to the bogs, and you just know yourself, if you get into the bogs in Ireland, you're eaten alive by insects, and you're very the mosquitoes and the gnats, and there's also carnivorous plants in there. It's not a good place for humans to live.
That's why they're seen that one with the two. We saw two standing stones in a field in Northern Ireland. Yeah. And that just looked like if you stood in it, you would just carry on.
Yeah.
Down.
No, they're not safe places. So Doggerland seems to have been one gigantic bog. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, I agree with you. In my own book, The Druid Code, which I have to get you a copy of, there's I call it the Megalithic Arc. And where it begins for me, we're basically the same, is there's a stone circle in Norway. I'll put a picture of it here, called Domstein Anna, and I visited it about 5 years ago. And it's the most northern stone circle in Europe, and it basically is just across the sea from Orkney. So that would have been the terminal point, right?
So that's a continuum from Orkney to Shetland.
That's where,
across.
yeah, and it makes sense because the Norwegian mountains are the same mountains as the Highlands of Scotland, and they're the same mountains that run across the north of Ireland all the way down towards County Sligo, which are very megalithic rich regions through the islands and those highlands all along there, right? So that was been the northern half. It swung around the south of Ireland into the south of England via Wales. It kind of meandered down through the Lake District. There's not a lot of megaliths in Northumbria and those kinds of places, which gives you an idea of what Doggerland might have been like. And so down to, and because Doggerland is right there, down through the south of the sort of Lake District down, but there were scattered ones all around. But in terms of clusters, down, right, and then down to France, Brittany, Portugal, around Portugal, into the Balearics, into Malta, into Sardinia, and across to Sicily, Greece, and down into what we call the Middle East and Egypt, as probably as far west as Iran. So that was it.
Yeah, and Syria. Yeah, that's the way. Yeah, that's what I see as well. Exactly the same thing. So not much of the same. So I think because on the east coast of Britain, you've got the odd thing. I mean, the Rudston monolith is huge, but maybe it was a bit like the wetlands around Glastonbury, where maybe when it went up into a high ground, you would put, and then you got things like the Devil's Arrows near Ripon and that sort of thing, Boroughbridge. So that maybe they were just the odd one, because I think a lot of they reckon that some of the ones on the east would have been wood as well, so they would have wasted away.
Yeah,
that would indicate not so much stone, wouldn't it? So,
yeah, the only one that survived is that, and that's interesting. That's off the east coast of England as well, and that's been preserved by salt water, stopping parasites from eating away at the wood.
Okay,
so,
and the other thing is the view. Have you been to any megaliths in North Wales?
Yeah, I've been to. I can't pronounce it. Cate Dewey.
Okay. I know the one you mean. Yeah, I can't either.
The one with the chamber tomb. It's like a mini version of Newgrange. It's very
Gorman.
No, but I'll tell you the ones I've been to. I've been to that one. I've been to a few around Anglesey. And I've been to the one that you have to get the key from the guy in the shop to go visit the artwork.
Oh, Anglesey, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, I've been to that one. I've been to and a few standing stones around there. I was really visiting St. Winifred's Well because I love old Holywell. And
that's
so
beautiful,
we took a trip into Anglesey, and but that I can't. You see, Welsh is so different from Irish. I can't even get my tongue around it.
Oh, I know. I do, but the first book was Anglesey, and I've taken people out there. That was the first book for so many years ago, Anglesey. But I've taken so many people around there, and it's awful when you get a Welsh person in the minibus, because every time you say you get corrected, but you can't get your tongue around it. But the one that's in Anglesey, I still can't say it, but the one you mentioned where you have to pick the key up. I went there with a group not that long ago, when there was a bit of a lift in restrictions. Bill Clary Gois or something, isn't it? Boy Clads DC Gois. I can't say that. But anyway, unfortunately, I can't even get the key, because I went into the shop and said, "Oh, can I get the key for Chamber 2? No, we don't have it. We can't give it out. Why? COVID. Oh, right, okay.
And it's on the coast on a windswept hill.
Yeah.
You know what I always remember about being there was the RAF jets constantly flying by, the noise of them.
Right, yeah, from RAF Valley. That's right, yeah. And there's just next to RAF Valley, there's a place where a hoard was found in the lake there. That's interesting.
It's a strange atmosphere and energy around there. It doesn't feel like Wales. It feels like you're in kind of some kind of foreign time zone or something.
Yeah, I'm sure it's because of the air base, because you're there with people with automatic rifles watching you as you try to go and look at the.
And soldiers visited as well. They just on their off day to have a look. So it's kind of weird. And I was there. You sit there and you're at the front of the tomb, and you think to yourself, oh, just 5,000 years ago, and the artwork is intriguing and remarkable. And suddenly an F-16 goes.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, just that weird, isn't it? We went to see that horde, and we don't usually, but there was a couple of people on the tour that had been on the tour before. So I said, well, we'll just go and have a look at this. So we went down. I said this was the place where the horde was found. I told them a story about it, and we went off for dinner in the main Harrian. No, that's not Tanny stuff. In the museum, we went for lunch, and just as a one-off, they brought the actual horde up from. This is a strange experience because, what a coincidence! From I think it was in the museum in Cardiff, and they brought it up for display in the museum on Anglesey, just for that 1 week that we'd gone down and I'd taken those people to see it. Because I said, well, you can't see the actual things because they're in the museum in Cardiff. And I walked in, especially this week, the horde of, and there it was, amazing to see. And it was actually discovered by, they were trying to dredge the lake during the war, and the guy had a Land Rover, and he found an old chain, and he fastened the chain to the back of the Land Rover, and he was dragging it out. And so, just a minute. That's a Roman slave chain that you're using there. So and then they found the horde underneath it. Amazing. Yeah.
That chamber with the artwork in it has a very spooky atmosphere. I took some photographs without using a flash. I've got like a couple of good cameras, and I picked up orbs, what they call, these, but they were not like the circular dust ones. They were like bright lights floating in the air around the stones. And in their book, I don't know if you ever read this book. This is quite valuable. It's the original one. Martin Brennan, he wrote a book about this called The Stars and the Stones. It's been re-released. Yeah, it's a classic. But what Martin Brennan and his friend is a friend of mine, personal friend, Jack Roberts, who's back in the 70s. Is an English chap living in Ireland since the 70s, and they used to sleep. And Martin Brennan's American. They used to sleep overnight in megalithic chambers around Ireland, and to record at certain times of the year would the sun rise here. And they found so many alignments. But I've always wanted to ask him about, did you ever see any strange lights inside these? Because I have. In the corner of my eye, they've been picked up on photographs in the dark, or on videos I've even got them. And is this why these things were built here, or are they harnessing energies or something? But that brings up a quick interesting aside here. There's not much star lore in Ireland regarding mythology or megaliths, and that makes sense because we're cloudy most of the time. But there's an awful lot of lunar and solar lore, which makes sense because you do tend to get clear nights in this part of the world more than clear days, and the sun, and in the morning and the evening we tend to see the sun more. So they would have built megaliths according to lunar and solar, events. And definitely there seems I think there's an awful lot. Sometimes things are made too much of the star lore stuff. Because there's so many stars in the sky, you can do all kinds of things. I think in some cases it's definitely true, but there's a tendency since the 60s, when sort of like hippies moved into megalithic research, to see them everywhere. Everything's in alignment. I don't think they always are.
If you have a circle with dots all the way around it, you can align to anything. I mean, the Castle Rig's the prime example of that. There's so many alignments. If you take but unless it's going straight through the middle, to me, I don't really see that.
On specific dates, and that was what the book "The Stars and the Stones" by Martin Brennan came up with. It's a beautiful book. It's full of. You can get the reprint of this. This is the original. It's quite valuable now, but it's full of all stunning drawings of the artwork.
Oh, that reminds. Yeah, that's Love Crew, isn't it? Yeah.
With them, around Ireland, and he was actually deported from Ireland, believe it or not. He was living here as an illegal immigrant, apparently, from what I told, and archaeologists were pissed off. They were getting they were on the cover of the Irish Independent newspaper, which is a national newspaper, for their discoveries, and mainstream archaeologists got jealous of the pair of them. And I think they
Oh
called
yeah,
him
yeah, getting all the
called immigration on poor Martin Brennan. He got deported, but he'd done previous work on the Mayans. But Jack, his friend, Jack Roberts, he still lives in County Clare here, and these two guys were total like Indiana Jones types, you know, sleeping in the megaliths, waiting for the sun to rise on certain dates and recording effects and stuff. I mean, they were way ahead of it. This is the early 70s now, way ahead of their time. But I think there's too much given to the. I agree with that. But if there was one place where it's definitely astronomical, well, solar or lunar, it has to be Castlereagh, because it's a natural planetarium, you know.
Oh, definitely, isn't it? Yeah, definitely. And the other place that was interesting, back on Anglesey, Bring Kethly Thee, the story of through the back of the chamber, when the front of the chamber is the sunrise at the winter solstice, I think, and through the back of the chamber, we talk about the rising of Venus, making a mark on what used to be thought as a standing stone, until my mate Rupert Soskid looked at it and said, "That is a fossilized tree." And I think he's right. And there's cuttings in it, and it looks like where the lights have been shining through, first from Venus, and then from the moon or the sun. You know, the different planets arise, because obviously Venus being the morning star, the light bringer, which is another whole story. But yeah, that was amazing. That's an amazing alignment.
In his documentary on that site, he pointed out that trees can fossilize much quicker in certain conditions, and that thing might only be 150 years old. It was put up there to support in Victorian times for safety. And you see that, is it Mother Shipton's Well in England where the shoes are?
Yeah, the petrified well.
They fossilize in no time.
There's so much in the. Yeah, people hang things there and come back a couple of years later, and they're all they're completely fossilized, really, for all the minerals pouring through the rock.
In Carrickeel, there's some slab stones on the floor are absolutely wood. They're absolutely fossilized wood. So that's another thing we need to take into consideration with the building of these megaliths. How many of them were constructed with interior chamber pieces of wood, like oak, with the deliberate desire to make them fossilized?
Well, that's a thought. Yeah. Well, yeah. Either they knew or they didn't know. So the other thing is, I don't know. And somebody asked us about the American Stonehenge. Now, I've never been to America. I've lots of American friends come over for the tours, but I haven't been that way. I haven't been to see, so I don't know anything about it.
Well, I know I lived in America for 10 years, and I know America very, very well. I've been there many times. But I did visit, when I lived in New York, some of the so-called megaliths up along the Hudson Valley, and there are definitely interesting sites there. There's at least one dolmen is for real. Now in America, I think some of them are, you know, the skeptics will say, oh, these were root cellars built in colonial times.
Yeah.
Some of them are, but not all of them. There's definitely ones that definitely set my suspicions off. One place in America I can definitely say for certain is an absolute stone circle for real. A megalithic stone circle is a place called Sentinel Hill. Silent Hill. I'll tell you why I mixed that up in a second. Silent Hill. It's in western Massachusetts near the Connecticut-New York border, and it's near a town called Heath. And it's difficult to get onto the land because apparently the farmer's a Puritan. He doesn't like devil worshippers coming up onto to see this devil site or whatever. That's what I
get rid of his devil then, shouldn't he?
I don't know how true that is, but anyway, it's absolutely a megalith in that you would see in Britain or Ireland. It's a stone circle at the deliberate arrangement, and it's been shown to have very real lunar and solar alignments similar to the one that you mentioned in Wales. It's the real thing. And why I called it Silent Hill by mistake or Sentinel Hill is because in the H.P. Lovecraft story, the horror, the Dunwich Horror, he talks about this megalith on the top of this is how far ahead of his time H.P. Lovecraft was. A megalith on the top of the hill that is attributed to Indians, but some of the more eccentric believe it goes back to possibly ancient origins. I think he mentions Celtic. Now, that was in a time when people thought the Celts built the stone circles. We know that they were built thousands of years before the Celtic peoples. But I think definitely America is loaded with megaliths, and it's very possible that there could have been people at time. Well, we know the Clovis people traveled 40,000 years ago from France to down along the Appalachians. They're using canoes to go along the ice sheets, so in the north. So the Europeans have been coming to the Americas for a hell of a long time. And then you had what they call the Native Americans, or the First Nations people. They came from the east over the Bering Straits. Now, it's very possible that the initial ones of them could have had a megalithic culture too. Very thing. Now, there are things I'm seeing, there's some fabulous evidence of megalithic culture in America, really fabulous, and it's the real thing. There's also people seeing things that I have to see them firsthand to know if they were. There's apparently like a dolmen, like 100 feet tall in Montana, and it looks like the stone is balanced on it, but you know yourself, great glacial erratics can put stones in very strange places and balance them in strange places, and I don't believe that one. But then again, I'm willing to go there and see. There are some other sites around there that look kind of similar. So I'm not going to, attack it from or put it down only seeing it from the internet, because sometimes I've gone to places where I've been skeptical, and when I got there and went, oh, you know what, that is the real thing. So that's happened to me a few times. America is definitely got a megalithic culture, and I think if anyone's as interested in megaliths in the United States, you have your own. You always remember that there's lots of in New England all the way up to Maine. There's plenty and even if they turn out to be root sellers from colonial times, what does that matter? That's part of the fun of investigating. You don't go in there. You go in there as a researcher, and if you do discover the real thing, and some of them definitely are. Hugh Newman did some good. I don't like the show Ancient Aliens, but they brought him in for the one on the megalithic America or something like that. And of course, they tried to swing it around that these things are built as this worship aliens, like they do it everywhere else, right? But he was throwing some great truth bombs into that show to, and one that he visited was absolutely a chamber. You might as well have been built in, it looked like West Kennet Long Barrow or something. And so, I watched that one, the Ancient Aliens one on America, because it shows you some fantastic shots with very high quality, mainstream TV footage of the stuff. And definitely, America's a megalithic culture, and it's I want to explore more going forward.
So it's something that needs to be explored in its own right, isn't it? Really. I mean, Hugh's not my favourite person at the moment. I was speaking to him last week, and he said, we're all locked down. And where is he? Over in America, experiencing Olmec heads. Well, because he cannot. Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah, brilliant. I'll be so stuck here in Lancashire, stuck in my house here.
Oh, well, good for him. I wish I could do that.
Good for him, yeah, absolutely. Lucky thing.
I mean, there's loads of places I want to visit that I can't because of this bloody lockdown. So if anyone get around it, well done you. Fair play.
You're right, yeah. I don't know how he's done it, but good on him, yeah.
I want to talk about some of these nonsense videos I'm seeing on the internet claiming that Stonehenge was only built in the late 1940s and 1950s. And they show photographs of the reconstruction job. I have the original book here, the original Pinnacle book. It's actually a phenomenal read by a guy called Cat Atkinson. And it has all the same photographs that they use, as well as line drawings of the reconstruction back in the day. Now, what happened was people have to realize that it wasn't being built then. It was being repaired because it was actually a dangerous monument. Maria Wheaton told me that one of some of the stones had fallen over because gypsies had lit fires next to them, and it undermined them.
Absolutely. But when were the Aubry holes discovered? Well, that was a long time ago.
1700s. And back
there you go. No, that's earlier than
this reconstruction. They used the Constable and Turner paintings as well from the the early 1800s, as well as the drawings they had from Aubrey and Stukely, and they reconstructed it as almost identical to how it was back in the 1700s. And there's illustrations of Stonehenge going back to the Middle Ages, almost 1,000 years ago. So you have this nonsense that people are saying it was only built in the 40s and 50s.
Oh, ridiculous.
And They lifted the stones up so they could get soil from underneath them that would be later used for carbon dating. That was one of the reasons why they did it. And they also they have concrete on some of them, only because they're extremely dangerous. When at the time,
concrete there is. I was going to mention that. You say that they did it in a good way, as if to say you make the concrete so different than the actual stone, because then you can see what has been added and what's original.
It's like the way exactly. It's like the way they put them in museum cabinets. Like you might put a gnome stone in a piece of ancient pottery in a cabinet. It stands out more. They deliberately they were making it look like a museum, but they kept the integrity of Stonehenge, and that's why
fantastic, isn't it?
When I was there, when the sun was rising, about 4 or 5 years ago at Maria Wheatley, the place was saturated with the same energy of the ancients. So it's not, it hasn't been destroyed. It was a very sympathetic and responsible reconstruction, and also to make it safe. It was a very dangerous monument. It was like there's that film, National Lampoon's American Vacation, where Chevy Chase backs the car up accidentally into Stonehenge after making a speech. Just imagine.
Take a last look, kids. At one of man's most curious creations. Built to stand the test of time and the elements, war, you name it. A thing of glory for 1 million future generations to see. And we were here.
The Nine Ladies, it reminds me, in Derbyshire on the Stanton Moor. Somebody went up there in a Land Rover, and there's an outliner. It used to be the Kingstone that was stood there, and he just went right over the top of it and knocked it right out of his socket. So somebody came by. The Kingstone is now the recumbent Kingstone, and that's just standing up again.
Recumbent is a nice way of saying fell over.
Over, yeah. I get some comments on the way home from the pub sometimes. Yeah. Or used to when we had pubs.
Finish up with.
I thought about. We were mentioning our tour for next year. I've made a little an itinerary, a proposed sort of idea itinerary, so I can see it for the first time, and you can tell me what you think, and then anybody else can make comments below. So, right, I thought 8 days. This can change. It's just like an initial. You'll notice on my website, whenever I do a tour, I always do proposed itinerary. That's in case when I'm driving along, I thought, I know what we can do. We can go somewhere else. So anyway, so this is a proposed itinerary. Day one's obviously pick-up day. I thought Manchester Airport. We're going to do the north of England. So there's two things: either Manchester Airport, or they can come to Preston the previous day. And then so the coach can come from Preston, pick us up, take us up to Manchester, pick everybody up, and then find a hotel somewhere in the Lake District, which is going to be my job. Castle Rig to start with.
The best stone circle in the world. In
the world, yes. Dhaka to find our little statues, because that gets people talking all the time. Still gets me talking after all these years.
You know, I still get goosebumps looking at the videos and photos I took of that. There's something very, very deep and special about those 4 idols.
Yeah, there really is, isn't there?
They had the effect on me that the Janus Bow Island had on you.
I know, yeah, it blew my brain. Absolutely blew my brain.
Looking at another world, another reality.
Yeah, there's something. They are like. Oh no, well, what's that? Because we're coming back to it in a minute. But so we'll do that. Mabrahenge, remember Mabrahenge, the massive henge in near Penrith, and that's connected to King Arthur's Round Table henge. There's a few things in Penrith that we can look at, like the Giant's Grave, where some sort of Viking remains, and there's the castle. So I thought we'd try and get a few different age range in. So we've got castles and megaliths and
the scenery around there is staggering. It's absolutely stunning.
Oh, it's beautiful. The Lake District, second to nowhere in England.
People think that every part of England is packed and built up. No, there's some phenomenally beautiful remote valleys you'd see anywhere in Ireland, Scotland, or Wales. It's still in England.
Oh, absolutely stunning. The Lake District is stunning. I remember when I first went there, because I was brought up in a council estate. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but so you didn't really get to see anything but sort of built up. There's trees and country around it, but nothing like that. We went to Lake District on a school trip, and I was sat on the coach, and we went over the hill, going into Indomere, and I was like, huh? What's this massive lake with mountains and fells all around it? I thought that changed my life, that moment.
That happened to me too. I grew up in an inner city council estate as well, a high-rise one, and what Americans call a project. And it was seeing the thing was that Dublin was surrounded by beautiful mountains. So to look across and see the mountains on the other side of the city, it kind of fired your imagination.
Yeah.
But when the school took us to Newgrange and Tara when we were 10, that was my moment of stepping into sort of like magical consciousness.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, to me, it was like, wow, there's this, it exists. You know, it's like, wow. And I haven't recovered. Whatever. So that's kind of day one. Day two, Long Meg, Little Meg, and Brough Castle and Brough Hall, all that sort of thing. 3 day in Keswick, because I hopefully will be in Keswick if I can find a hotel that'll have us. Then I thought on day 5, the Druids Temple that we were talking about last week over in Yorkshire.
Yeah. As you said, it has an energy of its own, even though it's modern. Anyone interested in the Coral Castle thing in Florida would find this very interesting in England.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
It doesn't matter how old it is; it still has something going on.
Oh, absolutely. So we've got the Decca statues and the Jebel's Temple, Druids Temple. Right, and Thornborough henges have to be seen. They're just incredible, one-off. That's 3 massive henges aligned to Orion's belt, which is incredible, and the Devil's Arrows, which are quite a few miles off.
It's not far from the Druids Temple, which is probably why that was built there, because the landscape has an environomicon or an enviromancy about it, you know.
Yeah, and it's the land of Bride as well. The Bridlingtons around there, so it's the old Bride, which you'll know all about. Then I thought we'd have a day free to go to Ambleside, and maybe there's two lovely towns, Ambleside and Windermere, bonus Windermere, and you can get a boat from Ambleside and a little cruise to Windermere. So that would be a nice thing to do one day. Then we can look into Pendragon Castle. We went there one day and it was really windy. We did a bit of recording there, didn't we? Another castle around there. The Shap Abbey. Yep. And Campau, Goggleby Stone, all those sort of ancient megaliths. And the last day, back to the airport. Well, back to Preston if everybody wants to come back.
Yeah, that's Manchester Airport's really handy because it goes everywhere. You can go. It's after Heathrow, I think it's the busiest airport in the UK. So it's flights to everywhere, and it's handy. It's easy to get to, and it's easy to get to other places from. And I think that's a great tour. I think it's really the ancient heart of Albion, as they call it, is right there. And I mean, people are going to love it. I mean, they're going to be amazed by the spectacular wild nature of these areas, because you don't, even the way England has sold itself overseas as a tourist location, it's always pastoral countryside in the south and things like that. There's
the Lake District. The Lake District doesn't ever advertise itself. No. It doesn't because it's got enough people who can go visit it, and you got narrow roads, so it never advertises itself abroad. It's like a hidden secret.
Oh yeah, I know people in Ireland that don't even know what it is. They've asked me, "Wait, I go in the Lake District to see some. Where's that? Oh, it's in north of England, north of like Preston, Lancashire. What's up there? Oh, mountains and ancient sites. What? They don't know about it. They don't know about it.
Crazy. Yeah, I know people, friends from America who say, "Well, I'll take you for a drive around. Do you want to go to the Lake District?" No, Stratford and Avon. No, you don't want to go to Stratford and Avon, honestly. And various things like that. But no, it's a hidden secret, and we can. Well, yeah, we can. That sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds good.
Yeah, that's I mean, the provisionally, that sounds brilliant. I mean, there's a lifetime of experiences in just in that those days, those 9 days, wherever they are.
Because some of those megaliths as well, they're just incredible, aren't they? The Long Meg and Castle Rig. And
the Long Meg, and and again, it shows the aesthetic, the sense of theatre that the ancients had. That's phenomenal. And as I absolutely loved Castle Rig, and we went there, even though there was quite a few people there that day because it was big touristy day, I think it was. It didn't matter. It was still brilliant, and it's magic. I mean, it's my favorite stone circle in the world. Nothing even comes close to it in terms of its setting and location. Nothing.
It's mind blowing, isn't it? Absolutely mind blowing.
I'm actually jealous. That should have been built in Ireland, but we won't go there.
And then there's, and of course, Long Meg. That's another blows your brain. There's the size of it. Well, Long Meg was the first one I saw. It's just incredible.
And the rock art as well. This is extremely Little Meg's rock art. Is really, or not?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Rock art is fascinating. I've been
finding the spirals.
That left a huge impression on me. That rock art on it.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. Because you've got all the spirals in Ireland, don't you? You've only got a few, and they're just in those 1 or 2 places in the Lake District. Just
a
three.
Lot in Scotland as well. But yeah, there are not many in England. That's one of the few places. I often wonder that stone, which is a different stone altogether, was taken from Ireland or Scotland, because there's loads of mythology in megalithic world. In English mythology, like at Stonehenge, the stones originally were supposed to be brought by Merlin from.
That's right. Yeah, that's the Mabinogion. Yeah.
Bushnell in Ireland, and there's loads of stories like that. And I wonder if that, where the way they have the stone of Scone that the Queen is coronated on.
Oh God, yeah. And
that's a megalith that came to Scotland via Ireland. You wonder if the ancients valued a certain stone, and say there was a certain stone in Scotland that they said we must have that, and either they captured it or they bought it or it was given as a gift and brought down to put. And that's why it has different stonework. I'm just speculating. It's an interesting idea.
There's a hell of a story about that stone, that it was the Jacob's ladder where he was rested his head, and then it became the Grail, and it went all the way around say Ireland, Scotland, and then when the Jacobites came north, he took it with them as a fighting, because it was like the Ark of the Covenant, like an emblem. And then when they went across to America, and then they were caught in Preston here, at the battle in Preston, and they were sent to America, and they're not sure what happened to it after that, whether it went to America or it went to back, because they think the one in Scotland is a false one,
Yeah, and there's also the one underneath the Queen's coronation chair in Westminster,
which I don't think is real. And that's why there were 2 around Preston saying that when the Holy Grail came to Preston.
And the Leah Fal, which is in Tara.
Tara,
Now that looks like a lingam, the Hindu shrine. It looks like a lingam, and that wasn't original. That's definitely a megalith, but it wasn't originally there. It used to be on front of the mound of the hostages, just right beside it.
Yeah.
What happened was at the Battle of Tara in 1798, they buried hundreds of fellas in there who were killed in the battle, and they used that as a grave marker on top of so they're all buried underneath that. That's why Tara has a kind of funny energy as well.
I love Tara. The feeling.
I love it too. It's a beautiful place, but it can. Between the moving up, I don't know. Sometimes I've been there certain times of year.
Yeah.
And but it's lovely and everything. I actually love the churchyard that has the standing stone in it.
Yeah.
People miss, and on the standing stone is a shield and a gig. So it's really interesting.
I didn't know that. I'll look for that.
There's a standing stone in the Christian graveyard. I think it's a Church of Ireland a church. It's a Presbyterian grave, but in it is a standing stone that remains from Tara's heyday. But there's a shield and a gig on it.
Oh, fine. Because I always leave in my ancient island tour. I always leave Tara to the end, because just walking onto there just fills me full of awe. The history and the atmosphere, and
it has that, and it's the ancient. I mean, that was used as a ceremony, as a capital of Ireland from Neolithic times, probably all the way up to the 1600s.
Wow, it just blows your brain, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it
And
turns out,
how many kings and queens have been,
and the
know.
ground radar survey shows the footprints of the buildings that were there. It must have looked like Rivendell from Lord of the Rings.
Wow, yeah, what a work, yeah.
Enormous ornate wooden
Wow.
buildings that were carved, like the churches in Norway. They would have been in that style, and they would have been in that stave churches.
Wow, imagine that.
But they all vanished during St. Patrick's magical fire.
Well, there we go. That sounds like a good way to end it, doesn't it?
Because we're getting magical fire now again in the whole system. Yeah.
Yeah, that was even evil. So if anybody wants to be interested in the tour, we're thinking of the second half of September 2021, as long as we can travel by then. So any thoughts, just let us know.
Yep, and again, this is part of an ongoing series. Go back to the original one on Neil's channel and subscribe to the playlists on both channels, so you don't miss out on these. This is we're doing this because we're really enjoying it. But I think you can see yourself. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating thing. Again, questions about the topics or things you'd like us to bring up in the below. We tried to start the show off with like current events and then go into our passions, which is megaliths and 40 and stuff. I mean, we'll bring tarot and stuff like that into it, but we don't want it too heavy politics, because but it is interesting because we're living in an amazing time where light is being shone upon the darkness of the world leadership in such a way as the real.
God, yeah.
I mean, I saw the other day some activists in America wanted to put puberty blockers on all children until they're finished high school, and then they'll know what. Sorry, until they're finished, until they've a few years into puberty, and they can decide if they're what would have been puberty, if they're boys or girls. So the darkness is really being the light. And the light is exposing the true poison in the world, and we're all looking to build a kind of a parallel reality that we don't have to live in their world, and we're going to live in those Victorian villages in the countryside.
That sounds fantastic to me. What a great idea.
Yeah, and that's what these videos are building, like almost kind of a philosophical news show around that.
Yeah.
So I'll see you next time, Neil. And,
absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
And we have many more of these talks to go, and all the best till next time.
Yeah. Cheers. Fantastic. Bye. Talk soon.